Good morning, guys. How you guys doing? Already a dislike. Mel is officially a bit time, big time YouTuber. I get dislikes all the time, usually from my haters. I have haters, guys. It's all right. Haters gonna hate, right? That's what they say. Oh my goodness. Hello. So we had Critical Cripple in here who was woofing at me first. I was on his show yesterday. Critical Questions. That's pretty fun. Um, Mr. Shadow Kitty's here. How you doing? Is it Synaptic? Synaptic with the C. That's pretty cool. How are you doing? Let's see. We're going to talk about our proto ancestor today, possibly a new transitional evolution of sea to land dweller. Maybe the news came out this week about that. Can I turn up my audio? Okay. Let me see. I can do that here. I'll move it closer to my face. I'm trying to see if I can. Does this work? That one didn't work. What about this way? What about this way? Nope. All right. I'm just going to have to hold it closer to my face, I guess. I've got it turned up all the way on my own mic, so I don't know. Okay. All right. I wish I had a few million years to see if it is. Says Synaptic. That's better. Okay. I will hold it closer to my face. With me is my supervisor, Nina the Science Doggo. Titan. How are you doing, Titan? Alrighty. Hey, Kitty. What's going on? Let's see. Let me see who else is here. Nether. How you doing? How you doing, Nether? Native Atheist. What's up? What's going on? All right. So, I need to get better. Now YouTube is doing more. It's getting rid of the stream now option. So I guess I can plan ahead and start, posting events now that it's working better with Restream. Restream had some issues in the past with events, but there you go. There you go. Doing fine. All right. Awesome sauce. So, yeah, it's just been a really busy time. I work a lot during the week, which is fine. That's my joy to do that. But it takes away a lot of time for my science communication work, even though there's a lot of overlap here. I spend a lot of my time doing stuff like that. Titan's awake, woke up, had coffee, fell back asleep, and just woke up again. Well, good morning, afternoon, and evening. Wherever you are, choose your preferred, time zone. I'm currently having my coffee. I made myself some breakfast this morning and was putting together the show. My stuff is working again. Apparently, there's a button in OBS that I needed to push, and it solved everything. And now if I just stop ripping out my headphones, that would even be better. Alrighty. So lots of cool news, lots of cool science news going on. Today I'm going to talk about the walking fish. They've found that at least 11 different species should be able to walk right now, which is cool. Good morning, little wolf, AK82. Good morning. So I'll be talking about that. Biological condensates. Boy, that's a terribly sciencey sounding word. It's pretty easy and straightforward. We're going to talk about that today. We're also going to talk about mosquitos and how and bad news on that, guys. We could talk about phosphine on Venus. I'd forgotten about that. That was a thing that happened. That would make sense. We could talk about phosphine on Venus. Can add that too. Also, there's new ways to there's new information about how earthquakes happen, particularly with the San Andreas Fault, which is kind of neat. So we're going to talk about that as well. And yeah, we can talk about phosphine on Venus. Does not mean that there's life there. it's extremely difficult uh, to to maintain life in a particular environment to where even metal and substances that can withstand high temperatures just fall apart and melt because of the heat. But there you go. A lot of people are like, ooh, life, life. Well, could have had that at some point in time. But yeah, one cool alternative explanation is that Venus may be way more geologically active than we thought. That's true. I firmly believe the life on Venus is methane butterflies. Possibly. It's a runaway greenhouse effect going on in Venus. If we don't get ourselves sorted, that could be the future of Earth, guys. Isn't that exciting? But, I mean, we won't be around to see it, but, our descendants will be. But there you go. So, there's lots to talk about in science news. So even though, I mean, we need to take a minute, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away yesterday. Um, she was an advocate for women's reproductive rights and that sort of thing. So her loss and our loss of her actually in the Supreme Court is going to be a big issue, seeing as we already have had some very unsavory individuals get placed there, in my opinion. Brett Kavanaugh and the like, the drunk partying frat boy who behaves like a child in front of Congress and cries because he likes beer. Who cries in Congress because they like beer. Yeah, grown adults behaving that way. I'd hope that she'd make it through the election at least. But she's 87, so that's a long, productive life. And if you didn't know, she was actually denied work at the Supreme Court. I believe I think it was a clerk or an assistant or something like that. Even though she graduated from prestigious schools, women weren't allowed. It was 60 years ago. Women were not allowed, and she tried to work there. And they were like, "Nah, you're a lady. You can't work here." So this isn't like something that just happened way a long time ago. It's something that still is happening. I think. Yeah, so I'm gonna get on a soapbox for a second about equality, whether it be in gender or race or color. Um, this isn't something that goes away suddenly when you make a singular change in a policy. This where you're having to go against cultural pushback from people who are used to a certain norm, and it's an oppressive norm. So I get some flack because on the internet, I get flack on the internet, guys. Can you believe that? There are people who get upset. Hey, Dinah. Um, and so it's so people, but because it's social, not political, true, but people often have social influence in politics. I mean, they do. They do. And unfortunately, politics gets to dictate which way society will go. But then society can always push back. And so we've got, not, the discrimination. It's illegal to, discriminate against a person based on X, Y, or Z, but it still happens. And it happens all the time. And people who report things, they tend to get blacklisted. you know. But the people who are still in power of these the situation. If you have people in a position of power, that's one of the things that's hard to prove is discrimination. You have to have it written somewhere or recorded or documented to where there's proof of discrimination, and it has to be a pattern. It can't be a singular event. It has to be a regular pattern. So it has to happen to a lot of people before anything's ever done about it. Example, Fox News, all of the sexism and the sexual pressures. I mean, we had a whole movie come out about that. There was a lawsuit. They had to find a pattern of behavior before anything had happened. And so it's really hard to prove discrimination on a singular level. You have to look and see the pattern. And so when I say like systemic racism is a real thing, it's actively studied. We see the patterns. When I say systemic sexism is a real thing, we study it. We see the patterns. And so it's there. And so when somebody says something's not real just because they don't see it, well, it didn't happen to me. Well, just because it didn't happen to you doesn't make it suddenly not true or not real. So that's something people who say they're critical thinkers, they don't consider that and take it into consideration. So we've had all kinds of women's issues and race issues for a very long time. And so even though there's laws that are meant to protect us, that still does not mean it suddenly is gone. It just, you have a lot of people who are around as young people who had grown up in that particular type of mind frame or frame of mind, if you will. So it's just kind of like, people who just pretend it suddenly magically went away because we had a couple good laws come out. Yeah, that's like saying people don't shoplift anymore because it's against the law, right? People don't shoplift. They don't get better at it. They don't get better at hiding how they shoplift. So it's really short-sighted and a bit daft and shallow to think just because there's been laws that have been put into place that suddenly didn't happen anymore. So there you go. Yeah, the progress we did so much less than we could have. I don't know why okay, I'm catching up to chat now. Our cave-dwelling descendants will give McConnell a high place in their system of demonology. Mitch McConnell. We do have some consistently better things, just a big bobble. Yeah, we do have some things that are better, but not all the way across. Hello, is it Liebenswerdig Schussel? Liebenswerdig Schussel? Is that how if I pronounced it wrong, please don't let me say your name wrong 3 times. It's like Beetlejuice. It'll stick in my head that way forever. And hello from Austria, the country with the forest cities. I bet Austria is beautiful. I've never been. Alrighty. So, okay. So, let's get to the science, guys. Let's get to the science. So, I check when I hop on and do a show like this, when I'm talking about science news, I check what's going on with the National Science Foundation. So, here, you can check this out, nsf.gov/news. And you can see all of the latest in science news. So I have popped over here. Now, the National Science Foundation is still funding research. Really nice, really cool research. And it's a diverse group of projects that they fund. It's not exclusively one thing or another. Oh, is it Titan's birthday? Happy late birthday to you. All right. Hello, Gian Mary Castle from Facebook. We got people on Facebook and Periscope and YouTube. What's up? All right. And you can even look at what types of news, what research area. This is really nice. You can filter through. So this is just, look at that. All the way up through. There's lots of different types of science that they support. So, first things first, let's talk about this study that suggests at least 11 fish species are able to walk on land. Oh my goodness. So this one is pretty big. This one's pretty big because people are like, just fish just started walking out the water. Well, guess what? They have that ability right now. They have that ability right now. And so they did CT scans, and they have now a new evolutionary map that they've been working with. So this study came to us, and it was a team of U.S. National Science Foundation funded scientists. They're out of the Florida Museum of Natural History. Florida man. We got a positive Florida man, Florida woman story, guys. Yay, Florida. I'm rooting for you. And this is in the Journal of Morphology. And so these particular researchers, they went through and they started doing these CT scans. They worked in coordination with New Jersey Institute of Tech, Louisiana State U, and Maeho University in Thailand. And so they looked at the bone structure of 30 hill stream loach species and describing for the first time 3 different categories of pelvic shapes. So they found that, we have the cave walking fish, right? We have the cave walking fish, which is capable of, walking out of the water. But they found at least 10 other species that shared that same hefty pelvic girdle. And so the biggest concern was that if you need that pelvic girdle in order to support any weight and also to allow movement, if we consider our own anatomy, we've got our pelvis, and then part of our pelvis, we got our ball joints attached to our femurs. And so you have to have some kind of support for legs, and that's where the pelvic girdle kind of comes into play. Let's see. Let me catch up on the chat. Alrighty. But are they walking out of the water to take a poo? Or should we stay with booze? Oh my goodness. Yep. Checkmate. Evolution deniers. That's right, little wolf. Take that one. All right. So, while we see that not all loaches are so gifted, more than 100 species of them are found throughout Southeast Asia. The cave angelfish is the only one whose walking capabilities have been observed. So, even though we have similar structures among at least 11 different species, we've only seen the cave angelfish be able to walk. So let's have a look at their paper. Paywall. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can find this paper. I'm going to see if I can find this paper on ResearchGate. So let me pull this up. I'm going to see if I can search for this on ResearchGate, because sometimes people will post their papers there, and then you don't have to worry about a paywall. But while that's going on, let's see. Hold on. I think I might have found it. ResearchGate. All right. It's just the abstract. You can now, okay, so pro tip. If you join ResearchGate, you can actually contact the authors directly, and they can email you a copy of the paper. That might be a bit easier than trying to find the authors and emailing them directly at their institution. ResearchGate is a great way to kind of navigate that. And see here, this is ResearchGate. It's all slid over to the side there, but I guess I haven't logged in. But you can request the full text. and they'll give it to you. They'll give you the full text if you want. All right. Read the full text. Yeah, it's behind. I bet it's. Is it open research? Am I able to read the full text? Is it paywall? I thought for a second it might be a paywall because it's Wiley. Yes, it is. Boo. I really wish the college where I'm at had access. They probably do. I just haven't figured out how to get through it. What scandal is that now? ResearchGate? How dare they offer their paper for free? You do know scientists do not get paid for their publication. In fact, often you have to pay for the peer review fees. And so scientists don't make any money off of these papers getting published outside of just being able to say you've been published. They get nothing. They get no money from this. I'm just throwing that out there. Alrighty. So so this particular, okay. They possess a range of pelvic girdle morphologies which may be attributed to adaptations for locomotion against rapidly flowing water. So what they're saying is these are adaptations likely from the fact of them having to fight against a very fast type of stream of water, so like a current. And so there's 3 discrete morphotypes associated with this pelvis. You have long, narrow rib that meets the base of pterygium. I'm not a vertebrate, like an animal vertebrate person. And then there's thicker, slightly curved rib meeting the base of pterygium. And then the robust crusted rib interlocking with that same really long B word. So where's Jackson Wheat, by the way? He'd be all in this. Jackson Wheat, this would be his jam. All right, so how do they do it? The phylogenetic positions of the morphotypes are visualized by matching the morphological features onto a novel hypothesis of relationships for the Balatoridae. The morphotypes determined through skeletal morphology were correlated with patterns observed in the pelvic muscle morphology of these fishes. And so they basically combined and they went through and they scanned them all. Okay. That's the appendix. Maybe they got some more information in the appendix. Computed tomography, phylogeny, walking. Look at these keywords. That's fun. Walking, fish, musculature, computed tomography. Okay, let me see. All right, can you see some of my work is up here? Oh, that's it? Okay. Variance explained by each principal component, shape 1.3. Abductor outgroup. Comparison of normalized physiological cross-sectional area among muscles of different morphotypes. Okay, so that's just looking at their muscles, where their fins are. Okay. That was not as informative as I would like it to be. So I'm going to have to ask for that paper, I think. But needless to say, this is pretty interesting because now we know that at least 11 different species have the capability to walk out of the water that are fish, but only one has been observed to do that. Alrighty. Let me catch up on the chat. One thing that we might end up seeing if we stop the diversity collapse we caused may be a new age of a rapid diversion event. Yeah, that's very true. Animals at this point are going to have to be able to evolve pretty rapidly in order to keep up with what we're doing to the planet. Man. Oh, goodness. Hello, Peter. Gonna go for it. So mud skippers skip, but do they walk? I don't know. They might. Mud skippers skip, but do they walk? So that's pretty exciting information. to know that fish have, there's, certain species of fish that have the capability of walking right out the water, but we've only received one. Who provides the rope? Oh, you're talking about jump rope or skipping rope, I think is what my folks across the pond say, the British folks. Oh my goodness. So, so that's pretty cool, guys. That's pretty cool. We've got fish that could walk. So let's shift gears a bit. Speaking of really cool stuff going on, before we jump into some bad news that scientists have found out, um, I will be giving a lecture in Denmark remotely in about 5 days. In about 5 days, and I will be talking about the use of and how to communicate science effectively through the use of various forms of technology. So I'm an invited lecturer. I feel like a grown-up. This is what grown-up academics do. They go and they have lectures with and these are grad students. I'm like, I get to lecture with a bunch of grad students and teach them how to talk the science stuff and use the technology. And I'm pretty excited about that. So, well, this isn't the first time that I've been invited to do a thing. It's like the first time I've been in, because I've done lots of different things, but this is like the first time I've got like a lecture as like a budding professor to go and talk about science communication, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's just, so if they let me record portions of it, then I'll do that. If not, I'll just share here what I talked about for that. So that will be a lot of fun. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous too. And I just submitted a grant this week on developing open education resources for the college that I work with. So if you remember, I wanted to do that anyway for my channel, and I'll still do that, but I'll probably have to do something different than what the college is doing so as to not, step on toes or anything like that. But I will be developing open, and this isn't like this is one of, we're developing online education resources or open education resources for students to where they don't have to purchase a textbook. And so they won't have to buy a textbook. All of that will be online for them, or they can print it out. So the cost associated with an expensive textbook is just not there. And so with the population that I deal with, 70% of the people at this particular college are poverty line. And so that's a gatekeeping thing. If they can't afford a textbook, it's when textbooks are like $200 and $300. That's, food for them for a month, in many cases, or that's, the light bill or part of their rent. So I feel very privileged to be part of such a fantastic organization. So we submitted the grant. We submitted that grant application yesterday. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll probably still start to develop that anyway. It's just if we have the grant money, we'll be able to do it faster, because that'll include technology for some of my colleagues who, unfortunately, I've been very, very lucky, and I feel very proud that I have wonderful supporters who have helped me crowdfund my tech. I mean, I've spent about 3 years getting all the stuff that I need to do this. And that comes from the support of people who support my work. So my patrons, other people through super chats, all of that comes from their help for that. So I'm really happy that I'm able to do something like this for the people in my community, as well as still continue to do something like this on a worldwide basis, because this is awesome. So I will be developing a general chemistry type of format based on some open education resources available on like OpenStax. So for us, for here, I'll have, even though I'm doing something with the college that's similar, it's a different chemistry course that we're doing there. This one, I'm still going to put it together and do general chemistry 1 and 2, covering the basics. And so if you're wanting to brush up on your chemistry knowledge, if you're going to take chemistry in college, I'm a chemistry professor, a budding one. I'm going to develop these videos to help worldwide even. So that'll be something there for you guys to use too. So lots of exciting things are happening, and I work a lot, so I appreciate your patience. But the good news is now that Restream and events are working better together on YouTube events, I will be setting up live streams in advance, so where you can like click on a notification or let you know reminder, so you can come along. I've been really not good with that, and that's why people are like, oh, she's live. Ah, but I'm glad you're here. Okay. All right, so that's what's been going on with me. Navardi and I will be doing a show tomorrow, This Week in BS, and that's at 7:30 Central, and that's 10:30 a.m. Australian time on Monday, and 7:30 Central in the U.S. time. And so I'm GMT, I think +7. No, +6. I'm GMT +6. So there you go. All right. Not certain what we're going to talk about, but I'll sort it out. It'll be okay. Okay, so let's talk about. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Next one. I'm sorry, I was trying to catch up on the chat. Looks like y'all are playing some games. Those are fun. Alrighty, let's talk about mosquito-borne diseases. We're like, ooh. What's that in Europe, ScientistMel? LOL. Well, I believe in the Netherlands, I am 7 hours behind you. You're 7 hours ahead of me. So if it's 7:30 here, it's like 7:30 here, then that's 2:30 a.m. there. Peter, oh my gosh, 2:30 a.m. That's pretty early. All right, so here we go. Avert your eyes if you do not like the mosquitoes or the mosquitoes. All right, here we are. We've got measures will likely lower rates of some diseases, but others may increase. This is in mosquito-borne diseases. So we might see a rise in some of these, which is going to be a pain. And this is in the face of environmental change. Researchers anticipate the rise of mosquito-borne diseases. Good news, everyone. Start spraying your yards. Don't do that. Oh my goodness. Don't spray your yards. So certain mosquitoes thrive at various temperature ranges, and they can transmit different diseases. So from this particular thing, let's see. I'm going to open that link in a new tab. We'll see that one in a second. There's a possible, so if we didn't already have the Rona, guys, there could be a public health disaster if the region fails to expand its focus on malaria to include other mosquito-borne diseases. So we could have a rise in other types of these diseases, which is just like Futurama reference. Yes. I'm better at time zones than you are, Peter. I'm so used to like shifting because I have friends that are in London. I'm just like, oh, they're 6 hours ahead. Except when the time changes, y'all change your times a bit different than us, like when the daylight savings time. But anywho, so because of climate change, and according to Erin Mordecai, she says climate change is going to rearrange the landscape of infectious diseases. Oh boy, chikungunya and dengue outbreaks we've recently seen in East Africa are becoming more likely across much of the continent. We need to be ready for this emerging threat. So, we should start taking bets now. How many how many people are going to actually listen to the scientists? I'm really curious. Are they going to listen to the scientists? Raise your hand if you think they're going to listen to the scientists and say, "We need to handle this before it gets worse." I feel like we're going to have another disaster film on our hands. So, let's look at an example here. There's a nighttime biting mosquito, Anopheles gambiae. I think that's how you say that. I would have to ask Jackson Wheat. It transmits malaria, and that affects about 200 million people in the sub-Saharan Africa and killed more than 400,000 people. Killed more than 400,000 people there in 2018. And they've done insecticide bed nets and indoor spraying, among other measures. They do very little. Those particular measures don't do much for the daytime biting mosquito, which can transmit devastating diseases. We've got yellow fever, Zika, chikungunya, dengue, Rift Valley fever. So those particular malaria-focused strategies are not shifting to these. So while we might see a drop in the malaria carrying ones, Zika and all these other nasty ones, yellow fever and all, that's going to make it worse. So we've also got urbanization. We've got an increase in urbanization, which has allowed those day biting mosquitoes. It's expanded its range by enlarging its preferred breeding grounds. Human-made containers such as discarded tires, cans, buckets, and water storage jugs. So these day-biting mosquitoes that carry some of those really, really just as lethal viruses are now finding new homes in all of the different human-made types of things. So their numbers are going to increase, guys. Isn't that not cool? West Nile. Yeah, I think West Nile is with the day biting ones as well. Nobody will listen. I'm with you, Titan. I do not think people are gonna listen. It's gonna be like Superman, you know. All the climate change scientists are Jor-El, Jor-El Kal-El, Superman's dad. Like the world's gonna explode, and people are like, nah, that's fake news. And then what happens? The world exploded. So there you go. So that's one of the things that we might see an increase in that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. So the increasingly important, they say, is the development of accurate point-of-care diagnostics for dengue and chikungunya viruses, as well as community-based mosquito control, such as trash removal and covering standing water. That's a big, big thing. I have a question for you guys, really quick, kind of relevant to this. Have you ever heard of Operation Cat Drop? That was a government response to a particular mosquito thing. How about the genetically modified mosquito release in the Florida Keys? Yeah, aren't those the ones who carried like the cure for malaria, or at least, one of the preventatives of it? And that kind of help. Sorry. I have breakfast in my tea still. Y'all didn't need to know that. What's bugging me? Yes, mosquitoes are integral to ecosystems. So that's where I was getting with Operation Cat Drop. That's right, Titan. So have you guys heard of that before? Have you heard of that? Hello, Vesta. Yes, you have. Well, let me pull that up for those of you who have not. Yep. Operation Cat Drop. This is why we can't just go nuking mosquitoes. So you can look at this is through the World Health Organization. Um, they tried really, really, really hard to handle some of their stuff, and particularly when it comes to disease-carrying mosquitoes. So I happened to find this article, and I thought this was a nice one on Medium. But you can look up the World Health Organization actually has more information about it. But Operation Cat Drop, they were actually dropping cats out of airplanes. They were actually dropping cats out of airplanes in order to combat some of the really bad government policy or government interventions that they have, but they didn't know. They didn't know that this was going to happen. But this is why we can't just go nuking mosquitoes. All right. So in the 50s, this happened in the 50s. There was a huge outbreak of malaria in Borneo. So in Borneo, and they spread DDT to kill all the mosquitoes. So the World Health Organization is like, we just got to get rid of all these mosquitoes, which before they understood the impact of the elimination of a single, species of disease-carrying thing, they didn't know that it would be a massive chain reaction that would lead to the plague. This led to the bubonic plague, or the Black Plague, if you will. So what happened? Okay, I'm going to blow up this picture a bit better. So the percentage of mosquitoes carrying the malaria-causing parasite fell from 35.6 to 1.6 during that 2-year period in the 50s. And, you can look more about that. So I'll see if I can put this in the chat, and you can have a look at that as well. So what happened is they went through, they're like, we got these mosquitoes here. They're spreading the awful malaria. World Health Organization sprays everything with DDT. All right. And you're like, okay, DDT kills off these mosquitoes. Reconnection successful. All right. Oh my goodness. I have no idea what just happened, but it looked like I just had like a hiccup in my internet service. So sorry about that. Hopefully it's fine. Okay. Sorry about that. It's the evil internet gnomes. It's the internet gnomes, guys. Somebody threw them at me. Internet gnomes. All right. Oh my goodness. So then what happened? So this parasitic wasp that normally eats caterpillars ends up dying off as well from the DDT. And those caterpillars eat through the thatch roofs of the people's homes in Borneo. All right. And so we see this chain reaction. So these caterpillars flourish. The caterpillars are eating holes in people's houses. And then you've got the geckos that eat flies. They pass the DDT. These cats, these feral cats, eat the geckos and die from eating the DDT. Then, because the cats aren't around, the rats survive and spread the Black Plague. So the World Health Organization then had to go and parachute in cats to handle the rat population because of the bubonic plague. So that happened. That was the thing that happened. So when people are like, we should just get rid of the mosquitoes, they're causing all kinds of malaria and diseases. Well, do we want the plague though? Because we know that if we start to mess with a particular species, you have a domino effect, and then you end up affecting multiple species, which can make things exponentially worse. So that mosquitoes, we are just going to have to manage it a bit better than what we have been doing. And so here's a fun picture. Okay, the actual, this is what they needed to do. So they had these 4 options: reverse the system by bringing back cats, bring back the mosquitoes, place rat traps around the country, or do nothing and let the ecological system do its magic. That's where they dropped in cats. There you go. Operation Cat Drop. So that was the response. So after all that happened with the DDT and that sort of thing, that's where governments were like, okay, this is probably a really, really bad idea. We need to not do this anymore. But organizations like the Gates Foundation still work to try to reduce mosquito outbreaks and stuff. And so for as much as people may give Bill Gates flack for his ridiculously expensive software, he does actually help public health crises involving all kinds of, vaccinations, and he funds vaccine research. He doesn't do it himself, but he does fund it, and he does a lot of good work. So there you go. So that's Operation Cat Drop. Fun times. Can you imagine those kitties? Oh my God. Arthur Carlson. I thought turkeys could fly. That was, that's WKRP in Cincinnati, right? That's WKRP in Cincinnati. David the Gnome. 5G. It's 5G. Man. No wonder cats want to be worshipped. Well, they got them jumping out of airplanes. That's something you wouldn't think you would ever see. So you can check that out. Y'all be careful with the mosquitoes. So we've got something else that's kind of cool. We've got mysterious cellular droplets come into focus. Titan says that actually happened in a U.S. city in the 90s. I think it was Seattle. Rodent population explodes. They fly in international experts who all ask one question: where are the feral cats? Yes. And there's, like with the lockdown, I don't know if you guys, I think I showed that a little bit here on my channel, where when people are self-isolating lockdown, animals that are urban, that are now used to people in cities, would start fighting over food. And rats have even become cannibalistic, and they will eat their own. And then you have the old world monkeys in India have now got gangs. Well, they've had gangs before, but they're fighting over food. There's gang fights. There's monkey gang fights over food. Because the tourists, nobody's, they don't have tourists to beg for food, because everybody's like, oh, look at these cute little monkeys. Let's give them something to eat. But now they're fighting. They'll fight over food now. And just to be fair, those monkeys can be really bad jerks. They will steal your stuff and take it back to their little monkey home and use everything in there. It's one of the things that I'd like to do when I would teach evolution in biology class is show monkey gangs to my students and be like, hey, look at this. These monkeys. There's monkey gangs. They're about to tear up this car. So it's like, woo. It's pretty funny. It's funny and it's bad, but it's a good way to demonstrate the ability for monkeys to have strategy, particularly in fooling people. So, Like, hey, they're not that much different from us, you know. They're just, you know, however you want to look at it. All right. So let's see. So there's something pretty cool that they've managed to do. Mysterious cellular droplets come into focus. So here we are talking about biological condensates. And you're like, what is that? Biological condensates. So biophysicists, they're looking at the formation and behavior of recently identified structures, biological condensates. So what are these? So we know already from cell theory, we have cellular organelles and that sort of thing. We have some that have membranes. And most of the time, they're surrounded by a lipid membrane. But there are organelles that don't have lipid bilayers. They kind of assemble spontaneously into their forms. Now, in the biology world, and honestly, in pretty much every aspect of our universe, shape and form dictate function. So the shape of something is often dictates what it is it's able to do, particularly on a chemical and molecular level. So here, an example of that are the biological condensates. So the little condensates. These different colors here are various protein molecules. So we have different protein molecules that kind of come together and form this shape. And then it has a function associated with the shape that it has. And we see this, you know, this is a pretty standard thing we see with cellular biology, molecular biology. This is just how they do. And so their natural conformation in certain environments dictates their active sites and the different things they can interact with. All right. So what researchers recently discovered is there are organelles that don't have lipid bilayers. Normally, that lipid bilayer is pretty important because it maintains everything inside that organelle. It maintains the shape, because sometimes water can play a role in disrupting the shape of things. Much like my hair is curly, right? My hair is curly due to the way the proteins in my hair interact with itself. This is its natural shape that it forms when it's dry. Now, if I add water to it, I break a lot of those temporary bonds. Usually they're hydrogen bonds. And then it allows my hair to be straight. And if I were to flat iron it, I could blow dry it straight. That prevents portions of those proteins from interacting with each other to form these shapes. So with organelles, you have very crucial structures inside of these organelles that allow them to function and continue to do what they need to do in order for us to live. But what they found out is there's organelles that don't have that protective lipid bilayer. So you're like, how that just, what the heck and heck? So what they were able to do, they've been able to learn a bit more about what these organelles are able to do. And so in 2017, they were named biological condensates. We think of condensation as the collection of water on a glass or on the window or something like that. We think of it that way. Well, biological condensates kind of come together and form a collection of proteins. So at one point in time, biological condensates are thought to play a role in DNA repair and aging. They believe that improperly working condensates are related to a number of neurological diseases, including amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS, where nerve cells break down, leading to loss of muscular function. So if you have biological condensates that are not doing their job anymore, then you start to exhibit signs of disease and possibly aging. So what they did, so we think about lipid bilayers. It's like made up of a fatty layer on the outside. That's what lipids are. And then you think of putting like oil in water and how the oil is what we call hydrophobic. It's afraid of the water. It comes together so oil and water don't mix. They think the physics of that is similar to how these biological condensates form. So if I were to pour olive oil in some water, and then they start to form these, you could have these little, what we call micelles, these little circles, these of droplets of oil. They think there's something similar to that in the same type of physics. And so the oil wants to collect together to avoid the water. Hey, Becky Seville, thanks for subscribing. And so we know when it comes to proteins, though, we know that temperature can play a role in separating and moving proteins. So I mentioned if I flat iron my hair with heat, what does it do? It straightens my hair. That's one way to kind of cause proteins to change its shape. Excuse me. So, Journal of Physical Chemistry letters. Physical chemistry is pretty cool. They get into the detail about the molecular dynamics of this. And this was in coordination with Texas Advanced Computing Center. They have a Frontera supercomputer. And so they worked with Aximentiev. I think that's the scientist's last name. And I probably said that wrong, and I'm going to feel like a jerk all day about it. But it's all right. Okay, so they're able to go through and use the Frontera computer in order to simulate the dynamics associated with the formation of these biological condensates. So they were able to take millions of interacting atoms and put it in a realistic type of environment for microseconds or milliseconds at various timescales to see to see these systems operate. Now, one of the things that I used to do in grad school is work with Mo software to where I could see the formation and the shapes of proteins based on an environment, an operating environment. That's OE, molecular operating environment. And you can go through and see how ligands interact with proteins and kind of look at their interactions there. So what they're able to do is you can take various types of software, put it in an environment, whether it's water or oil or, similar environment specific temperature, and see how these different proteins interact together and what shapes they kind of form. And so if you look at crystal structures of proteins, I really want Mo on my computer. That would be really, really cool. You can actually go and download the shapes of these molecules and play around with them in Mo software. Similar to that, but this is like way more high tech, and they're able to analyze what they said, millions of interacting atoms. Well, and see if I change the temperature, what do they do? How do they form? If I add more water, how do they form? If I take water out, how do they form? And so you can kind of track that. You can even record the simulations for that. So let me catch up on the chat here. Let's see. I'm going to catch up. See. I'm catching up. All right. I think I saw a question. So like micro jellyfish. Kinda, I guess, like micro jellyfish. Some people are playing around with the with the commands. What do I think of finding, okay, Vesta says phosphine signal in Venus clouds, biological or strange chemical reaction? Well, we did talk about that a little bit earlier. I think, if it's in Venus clouds, I mean, I wouldn't call that there's biological life right now. Possibly a long time ago, before it had the runaway greenhouse effect. But I also think it's possible that we had that on Mars as well. But I wouldn't get like, oh my gosh, there's life on another planet just yet. You can have spontaneous generation of different things. We've been able to see some in a lab, the generation of certain amino acids and molecules that can form into a type of structure under certain conditions, like on Titan. It's a methane atmosphere. And so you're able to see some of the formations of what we would consider the building blocks of proteins. So it's not unusual it shouldn't be terribly unusual to find phosphine in a situation like that. But I wouldn't say that there's life there right now. Might have been in the past, but it's so hot we can barely, I mean, we can send equipment there and might get a few minutes of video before, it's completely destroyed because of how hot it is. So if high temperature elements, like stuff that's capable of enduring high temperatures can't sustain very long on the surface of Venus, it's not likely that we would see any kind of life with that. But I think it's cool. I need to get the cosmobiologist back on my channel. He was really nice. He's pretty cool. He's an astrobiologist, and it's pretty neat. I stopped counting ways of partial or complete abiogenesis pathways at 42, and that was back in 2014. We found more since then. Mel, would I go claim it? I already answered your question yesterday, Critical Cripple. No, I wouldn't. Who's going to go claim? I claim Venus in the name of the U.S. I would never do that. Maybe I could go in a spaceship and be outside, and I'm not going on the planet. I'll shoot a rocket or something. Oh, hey, bigzebra.com. How you doing? I'd shoot a rocket and be like, there we go. Claimed it from far away. Claimed it from far away. I'll claim it right now. Venus. It's the U.S. now. It's claimed by the U.S. Thus saith me from my nerd cave. Oh, goodness. I got it. Russia did that already. Venus is property of Austria. I don't know. I think if we're going to all fight for Venus, we should do it in the form of a dance-off. We should do a dance-off. But do you have a flag? Venus terraformed into a second Earth. It's too freaking hot. We'd have to get rid of the atmosphere as it is, man. I think we need to have a dance-off for Venus. We just get everybody together, and we can call it, the Venus competition, and then have a bunch of people do a dance-off. I think that would work. You could have Russia be throwing ballet at us, though, wouldn't they? Bye, Big Zebra. Russia, I think would throw ballet at us. Austria, I'm not certain. What's Austria gonna do? What's Austria gonna do? I wonder. What would they do for the dance off for Venus? Mama Atheist can do ballet. Interpretive dance. We could have that. And, but I think it all needs to be does it all need to be the same form of dance, or the one that's the most interesting or the most entertaining? That's ballet of the Viennese opera. Ooh, that sounds nice. That's cool. So, yeah, so if we had a dance off for Venus, I'm for that. Shocking blue Venus. Helen already did that, Peter. Okay, I'll have a look for that. I'll have a look. Man, it's a dance-off, bro. That was my Guardians of the Galaxy, thing there. I'm going to have a dance-off. Alrighty. I got one more thing to talk about. Earthquakes. We've been having some folks experiencing earthquakes lately. Lederhosen spacesuit, says John Barshat. Is it bar shat or bars cat? Like you're dancing on hot coals. I guess so. How would dance look on Venus right before you die a horribly fiery death? That would be that's your goal. If you could dance on Venus, what would that look like? Realistically, you have about less than 5 minutes. Next TV show, Earth Got Talent. Bar shot. Thank you, John. John on Periscope bar shot. All right, so let's have a look at deep underground forces explain earthquakes along San Andreas Fault. Thermal instability drives certain California tremors. It's not giant worms, guys. The new Dune trailer has hit. Looking pretty sweet. Looking pretty sweet. So this is making me think of Dune with, the spice must flow. And then the worms come out of the ground. And Muad'Dib with his army where they conserve their own body water because it's so hot. I just, those are those suits. Are they soul suits? I forget what they're called. It's been a while. Oh, gosh. So California is having California tremors that are induced from shifts in temperature. Still suit. Thank you. Thank you for that. Graboids run. Oh, God. Here we go. Tremors, not the giant worms that Kevin Bacon controls. Mel, it's 2020. Do not give God ideas. Sandworms, indeed. Man, I think we need to try to get Mothra involved right now. We need to get Mothra involved in Godzilla. I think Godzilla would handle some issues, I think it would. So what's going on with this? We've got we got a NSF funded study. They all are on the National Science Foundation. They're all funded by the NSF. So what they're finding is, and this is Sylvain Barbeau, they say most of California's seismicity originates in the first 10 miles of the crust, but some tremors on the San Andreas Fault take place much deeper. And that's Sylvain Barbeau. Why and how this happens is largely unknown. We show that a deep section of the San Andreas Fault breaks frequently and melts the host rocks, generating these anomalous seismic waves. There's Frodo. And Nina's like, there's the large toddler again. Nina tolerates Frodo. Nina tolerates Frodo. She's just like, I don't know what Frodo's working at. I think maybe somebody rang my bell, but if I don't know you're coming over, I don't answer the door. That's just how I am. We in a pandemic, guys. You gonna come to my house, you better knock first. And I even have a sign on my door that says, don't ring the bell. Don't make this weird. No solicitation. So there you go. Yeah. So, oh my gosh. So, barking dog. Dog just ran out of the room to bark at the dog. That's how that goes. But anyway, we have a ton of activity in smaller faults here in Nevada. Oh, well, So what they're finding, it's the reason why we can open this link in a new thing. All right, let's have a look. So we'll look at the study. I do have a sign that is just like, no solicitation, don't ring the bell, don't make it weird. Yeah, Nina's like, man. So we're looking at Science advances. Excitation of San Andreas tremors by thermal instabilities below the seismogenic zone. And so that's a paper in Science Advances, okay, so the University of Southern California studied this. Okay, and it's behind a paywall. Of course it is. Anyway, so what they saw was the researchers observed that after a big quake ends, the tectonic plates that meet at the fault boundary settle into a go-along, get-along phase for periods of time lasting weeks to months. They glide past each other, a little slow slip that causes little disturbance to the surface. So they kind of see that even though there's this harmony there, there's a little bit of potential issues we've got. Gradually, motion across chunks of granite. Earth's bedrock generates heat caused by friction. As heat increases above 650 degrees Fahrenheit, the rocks grow less solid and more fluid-like. This leads to a runaway process called thermal instability, in which weakened rocks move past each other more and more rapidly, eventually triggering an earthquake. Who had earthquakes on 2020 bingo disasters? I haven't had that yet. Hadn't had Nevada. Nevada. I used to live in Nevada, actually, for a little while. I used to live there in Las Vegas about 3 years, 3.5 years, something like that. So if we have this frictional slip, study shows that slow frictional slip along deep portions of the San Andreas Fault leads to rapid increase in temperature triggering earthquakes. So we've got earthquakes on the 2020 bingo card. I wasn't expecting that. But that's okay. We're learning more things. Super volcano is on your 2020 bingo card, Titan. That's right. I'm in Alaska. It is always on the table. Oh, gosh. Alaska, I hear, is really beautiful, though. I've yet to experience it personally. But there you go. So, I'm trying to think anything else. So those are the main things I wanted to cover. We've talked about phosphine. We've talked about walking fish. We've talked about mosquitoes. We've talked about biological condensates. If you didn't know that was a thing, you'll learn about it today. And we've talked about heat triggering earthquakes. Woohoo! We've talked about a lot of different things today. So if you like what I do here, I will be getting to more specific. I'll go back to doing some more specific topics where I have like a traditional show where I'm talking about things. I think I'm probably going to do one on how scientific illiteracy has fueled issues associated with the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll share what it is I talk about in my Denmark talk. I'll post something for that. That'd be cool. Drop cats to save humanity. Yep, we've talked about that. Operation Cat Drop. We learned some stuff with that. Yes. A signature of life on Venus. Yeah, phosphine. That was September 15th, which was 4 days ago. So we've talked about that. So if you like what I do, click that subscribe button and the notification bell. I'm not pushing pretty hard for people to join my Patreon. If you want to join my Patreon, you're welcome to do that. I've really just, my time is like super absorbed with a lot of the work I do, but please know there's a lot of overlap with what I do in science communication and like my day job. And so I'm getting invited to universities to do lectures and stuff, which is part of what I do. I am working with other nonprofit organizations trying to increase scientific literacy, which is really awesome. And so I use all of my platforms to encourage diversity and equality. People are like, social justice warrior, ooh, SJW. I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted equality for a long time. And if you want to call me a warrior for that, okay. I just do what I can to make the world a nicer place, one person at a time. Missed the shenanigans yesterday. Will there be some next week? Yes, I'm at a point with okay, so I have the self-isolation shenanigans. And I have the self-isolation shenanigans. I'm not able to do that every week because I need some evenings to where I just relax. And the way that my job's going and being a budding chemistry professor, since all of lecture is online, I make my days available whenever I can when I'm not in meetings or doing certain things for my job, like grant proposals and all that. I give that time to my students, given that, again, 70% of the students at the college are poverty line. And so if they need me for anything, I'm going to be available to them, whether they need somebody to just sit and listen. And oftentimes, they just need a professor to sit there and give them a space to be human for a little while. And so I try to do that. I mean, although that's not in my job description, to sit there and be like, okay, sometimes people are going through stuff and they just need a professor to sit there and say, hey, that's normal and it's okay. Because then that reinforces them an opportunity to just be human for a little bit and recognize your humanity as well. So a lot of my time is devoted to my students during the week to kind of help them through all that. Happy Batman Day, by the way. Thank you. Batman. This was fun. First time viewer on this channel. Science is great. Yay. I'm glad you enjoyed that. So do come back tomorrow, 7:30 Central, for this Week in BS. That's Bad Science. It's a bit more cheeky and we're a bit sweary on that show. Not so sweary on this show, but because I have kids that watch this particular one. But the one on Sunday, bit more sweary. We poke a lot of fun at really bad science, really bad takes. We don't pick on average Joe people. We go after people who are promoting harmful ideologies, bad science, as a means to prey on other people, predatory people. That's what me and Nervardia do with that show. And do check out her channel. She's another science communicator. She's absolutely lovely. She has pet snakes, and she's really sweet. So hit the like button. Bats are mammals. So I'm going to read Mr. Rogers, and I'm going to let y'all go with that. This has been awesome. I want to bring back quizzes too. Also, if you have any particular topics you want me to talk about on the show, I take requests. So you can tell me, hey, I would really like it if you did this. All right. Okay, let's see. And I'm going to read a little bit of Mr. Rogers. I love Mr. Rogers so much. I read a little bit of him each day. Each day where I'm on the show on Saturday. Yep, Jen's little corner is excellent as well. All right, let's see. Let me find something. All right, so here, in a time where we need to be more compassionate towards other people, here's something, the world according to Mr. Rogers. Understanding love is one of the hardest things in the world. It really is. Understanding love is one of the hardest things in the world because, and that's leading me to this here, all right? Love isn't a state of perfect caring. It is an active noun-like struggle. To love someone is to strive to accept that person exactly the way he or she is, right here and now. And so it's really important for us to kind of recognize that everybody does have something going on. And if you truly want to care about another person and you want to love that other person, you have to be accepting of who they are, as they are, without change or any of that. That's why that's so difficult. It's really hard because our brains like to say, oh, this and this other thing over here, and just, but to accept a person as they are can also, you can learn to appreciate the individual things that make them who they are. So there we go. The world according to Mr. Rogers. Love isn't a state of perfect caring. just like an active noun like struggle. To love someone is to strive to accept that person exactly the way he or she is, right here and now. Understanding love is one of the hardest things in the world. Alrighty. So, thank you for being here. I will see you guys tomorrow on This Week in BS. Next Friday is Self-Isolation Shenanigans, where it's just a really cheeky, sweary game show where I make all the games. Points are arbitrary, and people win digital certificates when they win. And I'll say this. You always make each day special for me. You know how? By just your being you. I'll see you guys next time.